Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is briefly introduce myself. And then I'll let the other people from Families as Allies introduce themselves too, because we are very excited that we're going to be working with y'all. And we've already worked with you guys, but on this particular project. So I'm Joy Hogue with Families as Allies. And I will just let each of the rest of y'all introduce yourselves.
I'm Henry Moore. I'm with Families as Allies as well, and happy to be here.
I'm Karina Price. I'm with Families as Allies, and I'm glad to be here. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Nikki Flippins, and I do some contractual work from time to time with Families as Allies, and I'm just excited to be a part of the training and to get to know some other people.
And y'all just feel free to chime in as I'm going through this. Okay, well, we are very, very excited to be doing this training with y'all. And I think most everybody on here is from the SEEDS project. One thing we did is we scheduled this, but we opened this training up to everyone, including anyone who sees us on Facebook or takes our newsletter. So we may have some people who are not from SEEDS on here, which we're always excited about that too, because the more people that can be involved, the better. This webinar is scheduled through 11:30. The actual webinar will probably take about an hour. We wanted to leave plenty of time for follow-up discussion and questions, and there will be time for that during the webinar as well. And then we scheduled a separate meeting just for to talk more with those of you all from SEEDS about what we're talking about today. So we'll have those two opportunities to visit, and we'll see where we are at the end of this one, and then what's the best way to use that other session that's scheduled at 11:30. If you have any questions as we go along, you're welcome to put them in chat, and the people who I promoted to panelists, of course, just chime in whenever you want. So this is the training that we always start with, because it's the core of the work we do at Families as Allies, and it's about what family-driven practice, what it means, and why it matters. It's really nice to see you, Beulah. And we always start with our goals so that everyone will know what you have the right to expect from this training, and that we can look back on the end and reflect and see, did we really do that? So that y'all will be able to describe what family-driven practice means. And you'll be able to identify at least 3 practical ways why family-driven practice matters. And that you'll be able to distinguish between family-driven practice and other concepts that it's commonly confused with. Because there's hardly anybody in the universe who's going to say, oh, I don't really care what families think or what they want. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're focused on what family-driven practice is. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, we always start with a description of who we are, because we want you to know what we're committed to being and doing so that you can hold us accountable. And we also want to continue to remind ourselves so that we can hold ourselves accountable. I am not going to read every slide on here to you, because I know everyone on this webinar can read, but the first few, because they really are important to have that foundation of who we are and why we get involved with projects like this, I am going to read. Because we feel like this information, the way it's written, is really important to understand. So we're the only statewide organization run by and for families of children with behavioral health challenges in Mississippi. So almost all of our staff who deals directly with families, and most of our board are a parent or caregiver of a child with some sort of behavioral health challenge. So we support each other as family members, and then we work together to make things better for our children. So we bring families together along with everyone else working with families to work at the systems level to make sure systems are responsive to our children. So our vision, so the way we want the world to be different as a result of this work, is that all children, not just ours, will have the opportunity to reach their potential and succeed. And our mission So our specific part of what happens to make that vision a reality is that families are partners in their children's care. And we're going to talk more about what that means in a few minutes. And our core values define us. And these are the things we value. And we really want you to think about these things and know these things, because we want you to watch us. We want you to partner with us. We want you to hold us accountable. And if you don't see these values reflected in what we do, we want to know that so that we can get back on track. So we value every child and family. And you'll see that every is bolded, underlined, italicized. That means any child, any family who identifies as being part of us is welcome. We don't have any kind of entry criteria. We don't kick people out. We are about every child and family who wants to be part of us. We value excellence in our work. So as much as possible, we try to base everything we do on national standards and what we know works. We value partnership, like what we have with you, and then accountability. We always want to have a way to hold ourselves accountable. Now, these are things that we value within our own organization when we want our work to reflect. And then when we're working for those changes at the systems level, these are the values that we strive for the systems when we're working with them to value as well. And so that's our goal. And then you can see our contact information at the bottom. If you are not on our receiving our emails, you can text 22828 to family 19 and get on our list, or go to our website, and across the top you'll see a bar or a button for news, and you can click on there to subscribe to our newsletter, which is called The Ally. These are our core beliefs about families, and these guide everything we do. And these are also in our training, things we hope that as you go through trainings with us and work with us will become your core beliefs about families too. So we believe that families know their children better than anyone else does. Not us, not anyone working with them, that families themselves. That families themselves are their children's strongest advocates. And we also believe that systems should follow laws and policies about families and children's rights. So any thoughts about any of those beliefs? And you can, if you have some, put those in chat. I'll pause for just a minute in case there's anything anyone wants to share. And again, if you'll click the button at the top and make sure you're responding to all panelists and attendees, then we'll all see it. So I'm going to give everyone a minute if you have any thoughts about any of those beliefs. You know, it's always hard to judge how fast people might be typing, but I don't see anything in chat yet, but you can add anything at any time and we'll come back to it. But I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. Oh, got one comment. Okay, and Gail shared, I think there are some pretty strong and great beliefs. So we appreciate that. And we hope that we can, in this work, all be united in those beliefs to support families in the area where y'all are serving. And then welcome, Jeanette. Thanks you for introducing yourself. Okay. This is something I just want you to stop and reflect on, and we'll use the chat for this. I want you to think about, and this is just, you know, every good training has an icebreaker, whether it's virtual or in person. But I want you to think about when you're going on a trip, and it could be a trip anywhere. It could be across the country on the fanciest trip you've ever been on, but a car trip. Or it could be just going to run an errand. I want you to think about when you're getting in your car to go somewhere, what do you know when you're getting ready to go in your car to go somewhere? And we're looking for the obvious here. This isn't tricky. We're not looking for anything sneaky, but just think about, what do you know when you get in your car to go somewhere? And I'll give y'all a minute to respond in chat. The direction in which to go. That's a very important one. Which way are you going to go? And where are you going? Okay. Any other thoughts? And again, you can keep responding, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build on what Gail said, because that is the most fundamental thing that people know is the direction they want to go in, like maybe the path they want to take, and also where they want to end up. How long, and very good, how long it might take to get there. And there might be different routes you could take depending on how long you want to spend driving safe. That's, leave it to Ms. Beulah to come up with one that's very, very thoughtful. That's a very important thing to think about. What will keep you safe for the journey? What do you need for the journey? Any other thoughts? How long it's going, and we have how long it's going to take. And someone will probably type this right as I'm saying it. Let's see. Oh, and they did. Karina did it. Another thing that often comes up is, who do you want to go with you? Is it one of those rides where it's like, I just need to be by myself and think, or like, I really want company? And if I want company, you know, there's different people that can end up in your car, and some feel like good company and some don't. So who you want with you. So those are some very basic things that are fundamental to any trip. And what we want you to think about, and if it's fine, we'll come back to them and you can go ahead and put them in chat, is the things that any of us know when we are going on a trip are the same things families know when they're starting that journey with their child. And a lot of times it may not be a journey they ever dreamed that they take, or maybe even that they want to take, or even that they realize they're taking. But they know where they want their child to end up. They know the kind of route they want to take. Like, is it something where they need it to be really slow and easy and not put a lot of stress on them? Is it something where they want to like address things really quickly, and maybe it'll be a little bit a harder journey, or but shorter if they do a lot of things at once? They definitely know who they want in the car with them, and they know what they need for the journey. And I really like that idea of they know what they need to feel safe and like that journey works for them. At its most basic, and we're going to look at some like nationally accepted definition, the nationally accepted definition of family-driven practice in a few later in the session. But what I want you to keep in mind is those same things that anyone knows when they're starting a journey are the same things that a family knows in the journey with their child. And a lot of times we end up in a situation where families are being told that's not where you want to go. That's not really where you want to end up with your child. And even though you're saying you want to go at a slow pace and you don't want a lot of people doing things to help you on the journey. People get that forced on them. They get a lot of people who end up getting in their car, whether or not they want them or not. So a lot of things happen that if happened to us, I mean, can you imagine going on a trip and someone you don't even know gets in the car and says, we're going to go this way, and you thought we were going to Natchez, but we're actually going up to, I don't know, Tupelo, and because that's better for you, and what that would feel like. And that's what happens a lot with families. So in all these things we talk about with family driven practice and all the different things we're going to look at, you can always come back to that basic idea of what does anyone know when they're going on a trip, and respecting the journey that each and every family is on. Now we're going to do this to kind of bring home some of those ideas, and also just to have a little fun during COVID, because I know, at least in my life, going to restaurants is a little bit challenging during this time. But I want you to imagine, and actually, okay, I'm sorry, we're switching slides for a minute. I want you to look at this slide and see, and just think about, in your work with families, have you ever felt like you were coming up against a wall like this wall? And I'm going to give you all just a minute to respond. Whoops, I think I stopped sharing my screen. Excuse me. Anybody ever felt like you hit a wall? Okay. Yes. Many times. I think probably everybody has felt that way at times. And one thing we want to encourage you to think about from the standpoint of family-driven practice, sometimes, well, oftentimes when we feel this way, it may be because we're trying to get a family to go on a journey they didn't choose. Maybe we're trying to get them to go on a route they didn't want to take, or maybe we're trying to get them to go in a direction they don't want to go, or to have people in the car. And sometimes it can be us that they don't really want to have in the car with them. To start reflecting on those ideas, because I think this kind of feeling, especially in the world, and I'm a psychologist, and I tell people all the time, I'm a recovering mental health provider. And then I became a mom of a child from this who has behavioral health challenges and special health care needs. And it changed. I thought I understood, but then I really understood as a mom. It made me think back on a lot of these things and when I felt like this. And I've now realized in my own journey that I was probably making a lot of assumptions about the journeys that families were on way back then. So that's just something we encourage you to think about. In these slides, I'm going to go backwards for just a sec. All right, so just keep that in mind. And now we're going to do a fun little activity that may remind us of some of the days before COVID. And I want everyone to think about, and you may be going out to eat a lot now, or you may not, depending on how things have been. But I want everyone to just put in the chat, it's kind of a way of getting to know each other and talking a bit more, what your favorite restaurant is and what's your favorite dish to get there. When you go to your favorite restaurant, what do you like to get? And I'll just share, I like Walker's in Jackson. I haven't been there in a long time, and I normally just go there about once a year, maybe on my anniversary or my birthday. And I like Redfish Anna. So y'all want to share? Henry likes wings from Sal and Mookie's. That's yummy. And that's all. And, you know, I didn't think about this, but we're doing this at the time I normally start getting hungry for lunch. So I'll probably start talking about that. Chesterfield's blackened chicken or sauteed shrimp Alfredo with mushrooms and fried pecan pie in all caps. That must be important. Red lobster, shrimp scampi. That sounds good. Oh, that's so funny. You said children, you have blackened children or sauteed shrimp. Yes, you meant chicken. That's funny. Okay, the question is, what's your favorite restaurant and what do you like to get there? A ribeye from Outback Steakhouse. That definitely makes me hungry. I'm smiling, Nikki, because we could save the chats from these webinars. So your children comment will be immortalized. Lily's and Clinton fried okra. Oh, that sounds good. Any others? Nikki's getting feedback from others about where to get some of these yummy things. Okay. All right, so some good things, and you guys can keep adding them as we go along. But let's see, got one more. Ooh, Georgia Blues turnip. I did not know about turnip bites. Yum. Red lobster, shrimp, and fish. This all sounds very good, and it is making me hungry. You guys can keep adding. I want y'all to think about this. If we could take all of these things and put them together into one menu, and we just had this amazing, wonderful menu with all these things and any other thing you could think of. And it was like this, every good food that everyone could think of. And what a great restaurant that would be. So y'all can just think about that. And then I want you to imagine that we have this restaurant that has all the things that everybody talked about, but even more, just yummy, yummy, yummy stuff. And we all decide, okay, that's where we're going for dinner. Or maybe you don't want to go with this group. You can go with whoever you want. But just imagine yourself and being really, really hungry. And you decide, okay, tonight's the night. We're going for dinner. And I want you to imagine that you go and you're used to being able to go to this restaurant for dinner like six nights a week, 7 nights a week, and you go and you find out they've changed their hours and they're only open between 3 and 5 on Mondays and Thursdays. Now, that may have actually happened in the COVID world or something similar, but I want you to stop and think, and let's just say it's past COVID in a time where we can all be safe going out to eat, regardless of how we're handling that now. What would your feeling be at this point? You're hungry, you're not going to be, and maybe you came past 5 and you're not going to be able to come back till the next day. You're going to have to eat between 3 and 5. What are you thinking? Any thoughts? Karina's really hungry. And then again, when you do your comments, make sure you're putting all panelists and attendees. Any other thoughts? The question is, let's just imagine that you're going to this place that has this wonderful, wonderful menu. You're hungry, and you go for dinner and you find out they've changed their hours and they tell you the sign now says we're open from 3 to 5, Monday through Thursday. That's it. And where are we going to go on such short notice? Very disappointed. That's a big thing. Yeah, I think disappointment would be huge. Maybe frustrated. So let's say you're feeling disappointed and frustrated, but think, okay, at least I can go back tomorrow and I can have anything I want off that wonderful, wonderful menu. I may just have to eat at 4:30, which is a little weird, but I'll go ahead and do that. And I'm going to get whatever I want. And remember this menu we had off of this big, yummy menu. Okay. So you're going back the next night, and let's imagine, let's see, I've got some chat here. What am I supposed to do in the meantime? That's a good point. Like if I didn't plan to cook, what am I supposed to eat? Very good point. Okay, so you're frustrated, wonder what you're going to eat, but then you think, all right, go back the next night. Let's say you go back and that yummy, yummy menu, they tell you, we're sorry, when you go back at 4:30 the next day, our menu has changed. And all we've got is a hamburger and a hot dog. What's everyone thinking now? So that yummy, yummy menu is now down to one hamburger or hot dog. And you got to eat it at 4:30. Any thoughts about what you might be thinking then? Henry wants to know if it's a turkey or chicken burger. So if you don't eat beef, you may be really frustrated. Then I have to make a choice. What else? It's a good point. That's not why I made this trip. I didn't come here for this. I think that, yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. I have to make a choice, but it's not what I want or feel like I need. Yeah, I've got these two choices, but yeah, neither one of them's relevant to what I really want and what I'm trying to get. Very good point. Okay. Let's just say, and we'll say for Henry's sake, that at least one of these things is made from chicken or turkey. And if any of y'all, don't eat meat, definitely be a dilemma here. Okay, so let's just say somehow everyone finds a way to eat one of these things, even if it's not what they want. They're like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and order the hamburger, whatever. Then the waiter comes out. He looks all grumpy. Got a comment here. Not much of a choice, but the burger is more filling. That's a very good point. So I'm going to, even though this is a bad situation, I'm just going to try and make the best of it and make it work. Okay. So let's just say this waiter comes out and we can all see he does not look warm and fuzzy. I guess I should call him a server. I think that's the more politically correct. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's just say he comes out grumpy. He's got these dirty dishes and he looks at you. And instead of asking what you would like, he starts asking you nosy questions like, didn't I hear you've been divorced twice? Or is that right that your child had a lot of problems? They actually had to go to the alternative school before? Or I'm trying to think of another. no, some other nosy question. What's your income? Now, what would y'all be thinking about this restaurant at that point? You've had to come at a weird time. You had to get your burger or a hot dog you didn't want. This guy came out, he's a grump. He starts off by asking you a bunch of nosy questions that you feel are probably none of his business and probably aren't. What's everybody thinking about this restaurant now that we thought was going to be really great? Any thoughts? What does that have to do with my order? Yeah, what's that got to do with anything? They must have a new manager. Like, who is running this place and what are they thinking? Very good. Wondering what kind of business this is. And then, okay, I see I'm not welcome here. That's huge. Oh, and Henry, dude, where is your mask? Yes, we need to update this slide for COVID. You are absolutely right. Okay. Yes, lots of thoughts. Nobody is feeling the same way, I don't think, that they felt when we came up with that menu and thought about all that yummy food and we were going to go and really enjoy it. And I think that, okay, I see I'm not welcome here, really kind of brings it home. Or I'm in the wrong place. This isn't the place for me. And again, we go through these. Now I have to get 25% off my hamburger for being treated rudely. There's a very practical person. For some reason. All right. So qualities of a good, let's think about, we know all the things that went wrong here. And let's just stop and think about for a minute, qualities of a good restaurant. It has what you're looking for, even if it changes. So, oh, that's our, oh, hey, Javarius, I did not realize that was you, our intern. Great job. Okay. So qualities of a good restaurant, it has what you're looking for, even if what you're looking for changes. So let's just say you were going to order a hamburger off the menu anyway, even when it had those gazillion things on there. That doesn't mean, so you might be okay the first time you're only given 2 choices. That doesn't mean you should have to order a hamburger every time you go. It's easy to get to. And we didn't even talk about that. What if it's hard to get to? Maybe it's at a place you already go. It's there for you at the times you want it. You don't have to adjust to eating dinner at 4 unless that's what you want to do. Employees who are generally interested in what you want and realize you could go somewhere else. They're focused on you having a positive experience. They ask you to evaluate their service and how they did, and they offer different options for getting what it provides to you. And we have probably never seen that as much as we have during COVID, like restaurants that say, I'll bring this out to the curb. Some restaurants deliver, you can pick it up front. They provide it different ways. Those are the same qualities of family-driven practice. It has what families are looking for, even if what they're looking for changes. And one of the biggest places to start with family-driven practice, those families who are driving the car for their child's journey, and those children who are to the age where they're kind of helping drive, is asking them, where do you want to end up? It's not offering them a bunch of services and saying, which ones do you want? It's starting with, where do you want to end up in this journey? And then making our restaurant such that we have those things, even if what families want changes along the way. It's easy to get to. maybe even a place families already go. So when we're providing supportive or mental health services to families, they're easy to get to, maybe at a place they already go. And we talk a lot about their primary care provider, wherever they get medical care, in the school. Children are already there. And are there ways to provide that in ways that they find supportive and work for them? It's there for you at the times you want it. So if people need support and services like in the evening because, or on the weekend because they're working, or that just happens to be when they need it, that it's available to them then. And then employees who work at places providing services who are genuinely interested in what families want and realize families can go somewhere else. Now, there's not always a lot of options for families. And somebody said something that reminded me of this. You know, sometimes like if the restaurant's all that you got, it's like, well, I guess I have to eat this because I don't have any other choice. And families are often put in that position, like this is the only thing that's being offered to me, so I'll take it. And that doesn't mean that maybe I don't like this hamburger, but it shouldn't mean that I have to get this hamburger every time, or that I should be afraid I'm not going to get any more service unless I act like I really like this hamburger. That family-driven services, and when we're doing family-driven practice, people working in that are focused on families having a positive experience. They ask families to evaluate what they're doing, and they offer different options for getting what it provides to you. So some families may want like traditional mental health services. Some people may want in-home services. Some people may want things at school, and they may want very different things off the menu. We tend to, like that hamburger and hot dog slide, offer places that offer mental health support. And I honestly don't know what all y'all are providing. So this may or may not apply to you, but like a traditional mental health center often offers case management, care coordination, whatever they call it, service coordination, therapy, and then medication. 3 things on the menu. What if that's not what families want? What if they would rather like have some help with helping their child learn how to ride the bus in a way that's calm, or some help with transition times at school, like or at home, like when it's time to do homework, when it's time to go to bed, and some backup support there so that things can go smoothly? What if they would like someone who has mental health expertise to come explain to their child's coach? These are some ways you could probably interact with him so that he could be part of the soccer team. There's all kinds of things that families might want. So there should be variety on the menu, but also offering different options for how those things get to families. Again, some families might want traditional mental health services, like going to a place where it's offered. Some families might like services in their home or somewhere out in the community, but we should never assume like everybody's got to come here, or we're going to go to the homes because that's what some families want. So we're going to do that with everybody to have different ways. Not everybody wants their food delivered to them. Some people really want to go to the restaurant. I'm one of those curbside people right now. You may not be. There should be options. So those are the qualities of family-driven practice. Now we're going to get to the official definition of family-driven practice. The Federation of Families is our national organization. We're the state chapter of the National Federation of Families. And they were founded in the late 1980s. And our founder was one of the people, Tessie Schweitzer was one of the people who helped found the Federation of Families. And this is their definition, the official definition of family-driven practice. Now, if it was just the Federation, because the Federation represents thousands of families, hundreds of chapters across the nation, that we think would be enough. But this is also the definition that's used by the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. It is used by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So the organization that the funding, federal organization that SEEDS, that the grant for SEEDS came through, this is their definition. And in child welfare, there's a very, very similar definition used. So this is pretty broadly accepted. So I want you to think about everything we've done up until now, and I am going to read some off of the next two slides. I'm just going to read this slide verbatim. Family-driven means families have primary decision-making role in the care of their own children, as well as the policies and procedures governing care for all children in their community, state, tribe, territory, and nation. So it's about families being the primary decision maker for their own child. Now, this doesn't say the families you think are ready for this or the families you think have met some sort of criteria. This families. And then also for the policies and procedures governing care for all children. So being at the table for those kinds of decisions, like, and also helping design programs and that type of thing. What does this include? Both for their child, for what they want with their child, and then what they want at that more systems level. Choosing culturally and linguistically competent support services and providers. So what works for them, their world, their family, and families should have those choices. Setting goals. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up with your child? Or where do you want your child to end up? Now, I'm not talking about families saying, well, you know what I really want is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy because I think that would really help. That's a tool. I'm talking about where families, and people will say families don't know things like that. Well, that's true. They probably don't know that that's something, that that's a thing. But they know things like, I want my child to graduate. I want my child to be able to go to school without getting called about them fighting. I want my child to get a job at my house. And everyone from Families as Allies knows what I'm getting ready to say because we've all lived this. My child was graduate from high school, go to college, and he wanted to play baseball. He played baseball through high school. I saw no idea. I saw no way all that was going to work out in college. That's what my child wanted, that he's playing baseball. So where do you want your child? Where do you want them to end up? Those kind of goals. Designing, implementing, and evaluating programs that families should be at the table when that happens. Now, I have no idea what's happening with your all's program. So I'm not saying that to step on anyone's toes, but I'm going to tell you all a story about this. One of the most common calls we get from programs is they will say, we have set up this, and they'll describe this program. It's really wonderful, and we set it up for families so that families could do this, this, and this, and they could get this support and that support, and no families are coming, and you help us get families to come. Now, if that is something you are planning to ask us, we will talk to you about that, and we will work together to find supportive ways to reach out to families. We will always do that. But one thing we always ask people to reflect on, programs when they call us, is did you, when you were getting ready, and let's just say you knew about a source of funding, did you go talk to the families that you were thinking this program might serve and ask them, A, did they want it? And B, if they did, how did they think it should be designed? And that rarely happens. It's happening a little bit more, but often if families aren't wanting something, it's because maybe they never, or if they're not participating in something, maybe nobody bothered to find out if they, A, if they wanted it, and B, if they did, how should it be designed? So this is about having families there from the very beginning to design, implement, so help implement and evaluate programs and find out what families are really thinking. And one of the best ways to do that is have families ask other families. Because families, and I will say this, when my child's receiving services, and most of the services my child has received have been medical, I will be very honest. Everything I say about those services is honest, but I don't say everything to the provider because I'm too afraid, and when he was younger, of him losing the service. But I will tell another family everything I'm thinking. So that's important to keep in mind. Monitoring outcomes, like, do things work? Families are going to tell you that more than anybody. Families and the youth who are participating, who are at a point where they can give that input. And families aren't going to want money wasted on things that don't work. So it's very important to have families partnering in funding decisions. So this is the official definition of family-driven practice. And these are the principles that go with it. And we'll send these slides to you, and I think they'll probably be on our website. We don't, anything we have, we share. So you'll have this, but I'm going to hit some of these highlights. Families of these principles and youth share and have access to accurate, understandable, and complete information necessary to set goals and to make informed decisions. What do they need to drive their car? Families, not other people, define what their family composition is. It may be different than what we're assuming. You got to ask, who's in your family? Who do you consider family? Because it may not be who we would assume just asking about, you know, the basic demographic information. And that's definitely true for youth, like in their teens who have maybe on their own for whatever reason, and they found their own family that works for them. Families and family-run organizations engage in peer support, so that parent-to-parent support. And it's important that families do that. It is also important that family-run organizations like Families as Allies be a part of that, because we can ensure that peer support, that parent-to-parent support focuses on that. And families and family-run organizations provide direction for policy decisions that impact funding, support, and services. Oh, yes, yes. We will share our slides, and you do not have to worry about taking notes. Absolutely. So, and then this are just a few more. Providers, agencies, and systems take the initiative to change policy and practice from provider-driven to family-driven. So in doing this work and continuing to get feedback from families, we all, including Families as Allies, find out things, or families are like, you know, this isn't working and we would rather you do this way, or if this was set up this way, if this restaurant had different hours, if this restaurant would change its menu some, if this restaurant, you know, provided to go, these things would work better. So it's important when those things start happening that the provider agency and the system start changing the practice. So if everybody wants their appointments, or, you know, like the people who want to go to a place want their appointments from between 4 and 7 p.m. and the place closes at 4:30, it's not that families are resistant if they don't come before 4:30. It is more that that agency needs to change when it's offering the services. And again, these are not our definitions. These are the definitions of the National Federation of Family, the principles, and then that are also accepted by SAMHSA and the other groups I mentioned. Providers, agencies, and systems embrace family-driven practice by allocating staff, training, support, and resources to adequately fund and sustain family-driven services for children, youth, and families, and the work of family and youth-run organizations. We are very grateful to you all for proactively reaching out about this partnership and saying we want to have this partnership. And just like if you're partnering with another organization that is providing ongoing support to this project, you know, there's finance that you're financially supporting that. Sometimes people approach us and it's like, can you do this, this, and this? And it never occurs to them that we have to be paid for our work too, just like anybody else with a scope of practice and area of expertise, and ours is family-driven practice. So you guys are showing what that looks like for 6. And again, we will share these slides, and there's lots more that aren't bolded that have a lot of things to think about, but these are the main things as far as at the provider level, what family-driven practice and the things it implies look like. Now, I want to get your thoughts. We've talked from all angles about family-driven practice, but why does that even matter? Is it a good idea? And if so, why? So just what are your all's thoughts? And it's okay if you say, I've never thought about this before, it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not sure it's a good idea. I have had people say that. Y'all at Families as Allies know that I had, before he retired, a really close working relationship with Stephen Allen. We had this discussion, and his first response was, and he was at the Department of Mental Health. He said, I just don't know if I quite believe all that stuff. I'm really going to have to think about this. I appreciated his honesty. So whatever your response is, does this matter? Probably should be our first question. And if so, why? So I'm going to give you all a minute. And I am going to take a sip of coffee while you all think. I'm going to think while I sip. And I did do the thing of looking down at my phone while giving you all this time, and I see that Hank Aaron died. That is just so sad. What a legend. Baseball is a big thing at my house. Any thoughts? All right, let's see. Because otherwise you will run into the brick wall or be put out of the car and not have access to the family. That's right. You will be spinning your wheels or put out by the side of the road. Very true. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to ask my other panelists who want to, and they're used to me putting them on, giving you opportunities. I don't want to make you feel put on the spot, but if any of y'all want to comment, because you might, I'm just going to say this. Everyone might think, oh, family run organizations, they're just automatically going to be family driven and all this stuff is going to be easy for them. I wouldn't say it's particularly easy for us either, but we talk about it, look at it, work on it all the time, and are always working with our partners to support them in being family driven. So I do think we've had a lot of opportunities to look at it, look at ourselves, and make some significant progress. So I'm going to let y'all, if any of you all want to share about, does it matter? And if so, why? And let me check this one chat comment. Families know what they want, but they may not know just how to access it. Very true. So that's from Karina. So panelists, you got any thoughts?
I guess I can go. And yeah, speaking from some things we discovered as an organization years ago, it does matter, and we actually had to learn and really evolve, because at one point we were responding to what the system says. Like the system tell families, you need this, call this family run organization, and they're going to do it for you. Okay. And at one point, that's what we were struggling with as an organization, because we were pretty much doing what the system says. The system said families they can't make decisions for their kids. They don't know anything about their kids, and go help the family. And at one point we were kind of responding to that. If that make any sense, I don't even know if I answered what you want.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we do have the comment, appreciate your point. A reminder that before launching any type of family-oriented program, we need to know how families feel about it first. Very true. And, we forget that is one of the most common things that does not happen, is asking the families. We're seeing it more now. But were you getting ready to say something, Nikki?
Oh, I was just gonna chime in on what you talked about as far as the activity and just the information that you talked about for seeking, when the family's seeking services. And I just think it's so important for us to remember, because I've worked in systems where everything is already preset, and we don't give a lot of consideration when we're doing that to when families are available and would like to access certain things. So like when we look at that activity and we look at hours and days, if you have a family who works Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and they take their lunch break to try to come and find out information about some services, but the office is closed at lunch, then that creates a barrier for them. And the part that talks about what's available, I've been in a situation where I've accepted what was available, although it really didn't match what I needed. And so that goes back as well to what the person mentioned, that you do need that input from the families. You need to know exactly what matches, what matches for them. And even after services have started, sometimes we have to go back and reevaluate and see if it's actually fulfilling the need of the families that we're trying to serve, or if it's just they're accepting the hamburger and the hot dog because a steak is not available. Because ultimately we all want the steak or whatever is equivalent to that in our life, something that's going to be filling and actually going to meet what the requirements are for our child, so that everybody, they can be successful, and then we can be in a better place. But I just think that I like that activity, and I always just really like to make sure people understand that that's kind of where we're coming from with it, is because it's so important to get that voice, not just from any family. And that's the other thing we have to be careful about as well. Sometimes we have committees and groups of people who have a family member, but if it's not a family member that would fit into accessing the services, they don't really always have a real clear view as well. So you need to know from people who are actually needing to accept those services what it looks like, what it feels like, and if it's working for them.
And we often hear where families are not being compliant, but what happens when the system is not compliant with what the need, what the family needs? So you have to meet the families where they are, not where you think they should be. You have to meet them where they are right then. And then the families know where they want to go. If we just stop and listen to what the families are saying, they're telling us where they want to go and what they need. And it's our job to try to support them in accessing those.
I like that about the system being compliant. And then some of the points you brought up are so simple. How could we overlook them so frequently? We all do. And then that sharpens this perspective. Assessing family needs and letting families know that you are not just doing a job, and that they're there to, and that you're there to help support their needs. Yes. Yeah. That is about what they say they need. Any other thoughts from any of my fellow panelists before I go to the next slide? So these are just overall, as we've done this work, both ourselves and then working with a lot of organizations and working at the policy level and with systems. These are some overarching things we've seen over the years, is that there's improved outcomes because it's based on what families actually want. So it's much more likely those things will happen and that it matters to families. It's always interesting to me when programs, and again, I have no idea what y'all are doing, so I'm not saying y'all are doing this, but we'll report a lot of outcomes like this happened, that happened, blah, blah, blah. But is that actually what families wanted to happen? So, but that you'll get there will be improved outcomes that are meaningful to families. And I know way back when, before I ever had a child and I was doing this work with families, it was very hard for me to make this transition. And I'm not saying that I necessarily made it all that successfully, but I did become much more open to partnering with families. And I worked with families as allies way back then and ended up with families like, we did develop programs together. And, it's easy to think about that and think, oh, that's great. It was like all singing Kumbaya together. It was not. I had families in my face like this all the time telling me what I was doing wrong. And it was hard. And we had to have these really difficult discussions. And I really had to look at myself and, share a lot of things that were hard. But I started seeing both as a psychologist and then in designing programs and then working with families at the systems level to do legislation and things like that, that things happened instead of just like being really frustrated because working and working and working and nothing ever changed, that there really were changes. I'm gonna check chat. Every child deserves a quality life. Absolutely. And just based, well, I kind of was an example of this, and was a very imperfect clinician and I have never made any bones about the fact I'm not far from being a perfect person in general. But when you really transition to this approach, and it's a journey, I don't think we ever arrive, it's a much better use of provider skills and resources and more efficient use of funding, because money isn't being wasted on a bunch of things that don't work. Now, I will say well, I'm not going to say this because I think the next slide will give us a chance to reflect on this. I want you to think about with this idea of family-driven practice, what are your ideas about how family-driven practice could change what you're doing as an individual, and at the agency level for any agency, how it might start changing practices? And Nikki brought up some very, very good examples of that. So any thoughts about how, like, actually putting these principles and the principle of family-driven practice into practice, how that might change either what a person would do individually who's working with families, or what an agency or organization might do? I'll give you time to respond in chat. And if any of the panelists want to share your thoughts on that, and I know Nikki gave a couple good examples and might have more, or if any of the rest of y'all want to comment. Okay, any thoughts? Right, if anybody has any, you can put them in chat and we'll come back to them. I think, and this may actually be in one of the later slides, I think one of the hardest things for me is from when I really started understanding this concept, as you know, in an imperfect way, I realized I wasn't the person in control anymore. And I don't think I've ever felt in control of my work since committing to this transition as I did before. And that's a very hard feeling. I still struggle with it. But I will also say I think control is greatly overrated. So we got a comment in chat. Serving as a support system and guidance, right? Rather than just being the decider on things. Good point. Okay. Now, and you might wonder why we had these masks up here. There are things that can masquerade as family-driven practice, and we can think, oh, I'm being family-driven. So these are just some things we encourage you to think about. One is always focusing on how much you care about families. We don't doubt that anyone coming to any of our trainings really cares about families, because who's going to go into this kind of work if they don't care about families? That is a necessary, necessary but not sufficient. It is family-driven practice does not mean, oh, I really care about families, so that means I'm driven. I'm family-driven because I'm driven by how much I care about them. In fact, that can set you up to be making decisions for them because it feels like you care so much. Seeing oneself as the voice for families. Remember, they're the expert on their situation. They're the ones who know where they want to go. They know where they want their child to end up. We are not their voice. We're supporting their voice. Now, a lot of times people feel pretty beaten down for whatever reason, either because of what's happened to them and often because of the way systems have responded to them, that they may not feel like they have a voice or that it's safe to share their voice, oftentimes because they feel like they're going to lose services, but they have that voice. Yes, looking for community support gets families involved. It maximizes outcomes. Very true. Now this one's a little tricky to understand, focusing, and we do this training, and I don't think you guys do parent-to-parent peer support through your organization. But once organizations start employing families to work for them, which we think is important, and we like to support you in planning for that in ways that can be done in a family-driven way, because it can be done in very not family-driven ways and end up causing more problems if it's not well thought out and prepared for. But sometimes when that happens, people will be very focused on, we got us a family member now. So we are, we're really being family driven. And then they feel like they kind of have to showcase this family member and have that person like tell their story and everything they went through. And now they're working for this program. That's focusing on that family story rather than just looking and saying, this is a family member. And because they have lived this life and negotiated this, they have this lived experience that is their source of expertise. Just like a social worker who has gone and gotten a social worker degree, they have that area of expertise. A psychiatrist or doctor who's gone to medical school, they have that area of expertise. Families have the experience of having lived this, their lived experience, that's their area of expertise. And that expertise informing what we do is really important. That's very different than saying, you're the family, we're going to put you over here, you tell your story, you bring tears to everybody's eyes, and then we can all feel good about what we're doing. We're not talking about having families there to just, to tell a story. We're talking about having them there because they're experts in this area of what it is to be living this life. Okay, so focusing on family stories rather than their lived experience can be something that feels like it's family driven, but it's not. Efforts to include families that are different from how other groups are included. So one of the ways we most commonly see this is a project will say, okay, maybe they have this, and I don't know if your project requires different types of committees and stuff, but the system of care projects, I'll pick on them and they know I pick on them in the state who get funding to set up a system of care for children's mental health within a specific community. Well, they are required to have different committees and decision-making groups. And sometimes what they will do is staff all those with providers and staff who are used to being on those committees and want to have a separate family advisory board. That's treating families differently. Families need to be on the same committees and in the same decision-making groups that everybody else is. Now, they need support to do that. And a whole nother thing we do is leadership training so that families are prepared to do that, because we don't just throw them into roles. But it can, something that can feel like it's family driven, but it's not, is if you include families in ways that are different than how you include everybody else. Just like the thing on having a family tell a gripping story. If everybody else doesn't have to tell their story of how they ended up where they are at the beginning of a meeting, a family shouldn't either. And then not offering families the same benefits and preparations that other professionals receive when they do system level work. Another thing we often see is organizations will go through this training or be looking at some of these transitions. They'll be like, oh, got to get families on committees. So they'll just put a family on some committee to look at legislation or look at policy. And that family has no idea what they're doing. We would not take somebody, let's say a social worker, who is just at the beginning of their training and say, here, you go be on this committee and you give the social work perspective. Families need to be trained and supported just like anyone else providing their expertise. And again, that's why we do things like leadership training. And then also assuming that a system or provider organization can take on the role that a family-run organization plays in a system of care. You know, our organization and other organizations that are run by families from a population, and there are others like Family Voices, Children with Special Health Care Needs, the ARC for families of children and adults with developmental disabilities, play a very special role. We can hold the system accountable. We can do training like this. We have we're part of the system, but we have an objective perspective and the lived experience that goes with that. Sometimes provider organizations will be like, well, we'll just hire a couple family members and then we're being family driven, instead of realizing that there's this whole scope of things that need to happen. Just gonna check chat. Does anybody on the panel have anything you want to add? Is there anything on this that I'm leaving off?
No, but I want to just comment on something when you were talking about the leadership training. Before the leadership training, things happen like, you know, family driven is maybe, you know, we tell families what to do, not really leaders. At the beginning of this training, parents, they find out that they have these leadership skills. They already have these skills and they already are leaders. And they're able to express, oh, I'm already a leader. These are my skills. And it's unreal the level, they'll go to a higher level during the training because at the beginning, because they've been told that they're not leaders. The system has been telling them all this time, you can't make decisions for your family. You don't have enough education, but they're the experts on their own children or their own child. So at the beginning of the training, when they realize I'm already a leader and they're able to express it, it's just so, let me just say this, it's awesome.
Any other thoughts?
And to go back on what you said about family members being put on committees and not understanding why they're there. I was one of those family members that was put on committees and didn't understand why I was there. And a lot of times what they were talking about, it seemed like a foreign language to me. But once I learned what my role was and that my voice did matter, then I put more effort and more energy into the committees that I was on.
Yeah, because we all need to feel like stuff makes sense that we're being asked to do. Okay. Let's see some. All right. And I'm gonna, does anybody have any questions? You can put them in chat, or if you would see something. I can unmute you. All right, while you're thinking about that, this is what we said we would do at the beginning. And I want you all to reflect on whether or not these are things you are better able to do now than you were at the beginning, that you'd be able to describe what family-driven practice means. And the thing we always ask you, because you'll have these slides, most of these definitions and stuff are on our website. You can find them other places. We're not saying that you can recite all those principles that go with the Federation of Family definition, but to familiarize yourself with those and to always be able to go back and think, what do people know? What do I know when I get in a car to make a trip? You'll be able to identify at least 3 practical ways that family-driven practice matters. We talked about better outcomes, better use of providers, that providers' resources and talents are better used, and it's better use of money. that you'll be able to distinguish between family-driven practice and other concepts. Oh, I got a typo. That is commonly confused with, and that was that last slide that we did.